Are you interested in getting to understand how you can live your best life, but still having your best body? Well, today I'm going to talk with Lisa. Lisa Franz is a nutrition coach. She got a lot of experience, and it's really interesting what she has to say because it's not only the diet that you may have started in the past, it's a little bit more of a tailored approach. Lisa works with a science based fat loss strategy and nutritional periodization, which is a very interesting concept. She takes a big focus on keeping the hormones and your metabolism healthy along the way. And she has seen over 300 clients succeed in her 5+ years of work. So, if you really want to understand how to get your body toned, but in the right way, so you can still eat that piece of cake that you really want, then stay tuned. We will break down a lot of good advices today. I'm Ijar, and this is Adulthlete. Hi, Lisa. Welcome on Adulthlete. How are you today?
I'm great. I'm very excited to speak with you, Eleanor. I think we have lots to cover in our chat today. So, yeah, I'm excited to talk to you.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. So I was really interested by your profile because you are a nutrition coach. So you have spoken with a lot of people. And I guess this gave you a little bit more confidence and experience on what people actually need and how they should work around their nutrition and, the life balance that everything comes together. But first of all, I would like to ask you, how did you come into this role?
Well, exactly because of what you touched on. I too struggled with a lot of things in terms of nutrition in the past, and I was so confused with all the varying information out there. One person tells you you need to intermittently fast, another person tells you you need to be vegan, the next person tells you you should be carnivore. And so I just thought to myself, okay, I want to lose some weight. After I finished high school many years ago, I went on a trip around the world for 1 year, and I gained quite a bit of weight during that time because I was just partying too much, enjoying myself a little bit too much. So when I came back, I was like, okay, for the first time in my life, I need to lose weight. I was very fortunate that when I was growing up, I didn't really have any issues with that. I was just very active and quote unquote eating well, and that was enough at the time. But once I had gained the weight, I was like, okay, what do I do now? So I just started eating a little bit less. I thought that that could work, and it worked, but I was a little bit hungrier, and then someone else said to me, why don't you try low fat? So I tried a low fat diet, and it worked a little bit, but then the next person said, why don't you try low carb? So I tried low carb, and that worked a little bit. But over time, I just added one diet to another, to another, to another, and I felt more and more restricted. I just felt like, okay, at some point I can't really have anything anymore. Like, all I'm eating now is like vegetable and chicken. What the hell? I want to live a little bit too. And so I truly thought there has to be a way that I can have my body, my goal body, and at the same time live a life that I'm actually enjoying. I don't think that we're here on this earth to be suffering, and also not to be in a body that we feel uncomfortable in all the time. I just thought there has to be more. And because or by chance, I guess, I found an article by someone called Nicole Capurzo. She's an athlete, a CrossFit athlete, and the article was titled "How Donuts Gave Me Abs and a 90 kg Snatch." The snatch is a very heavy lift, and I was like, wow, I want all of that. I want a donut, I want a six pack, and I want to be able to be strong and lift heavy. And so I read the article, and in this article, she basically explained that she too was trying to force herself into just clean eating all the time. And she felt very deprived, and like she couldn't eat the things that she wanted, but at the same time, she was super strict. But someone then told her or taught her that in the end, it comes down to calorie balance, and that if we're doing it the right way and if we learn enough about our own metabolism, we can fit in a piece of cake here and there, and we can fit in a little bit of bread or some cereal from time to time if we balance it out the right way with vegetables and protein the other times. And so I was like, whoa, that sounds amazing. I'm going to have to give that a try. And that was my introduction into calorie counting. And for a lot of people, the first time they hear calorie counting, it sounds really boring because they just think, oh, you need a food scale and you need an app or something to enter your food in, and it's very tedious. But for me personally, and for all the people that I have taught since, or most of them anyway, it has provided a tremendous amount of food freedom. Food freedom is really like one of the words that I'm really big on because, yeah, it has allowed me to travel and have some fried rice and at the same time come back from my vacation and be the same weight or be, just happy in my body. Has allowed me to go to my grandma's house and have a piece of cake without feeling guilty or feeling like I need to work it off afterwards. And so, yeah, my mission nowadays is to spread some more of that message of food freedom and just educating people on how much they should actually be eating and what kind of distribution in terms of quote unquote clean foods and some fun foods and protein and so on. So yes, that's my mission.
Yeah, the calorie counting, I did it. It helped me lose weight. I'm not doing it right now. There's a lot of conflicts around it because sometimes it also triggers a little bit. What I have to say is that actually, once you start doing it and you pretty much eat the same stuff, I mean, yeah, you can change sometimes, but you know how much they weigh. So you put them in a bowl, you can see the amount and you know for sure how much is it. So I remember this was like, even if you do it for a period of time like 6 months, 1 year, it's so educational because you really understand how much you're eating and the consequences of it. So then you can actually do it by yourself, instead of just eat whatever you have in front of you, right? It's so
I,
particular and
I
it
love
helps.
everything that you're saying, and it's so true from my own experience and from the experience that I have with my clients. As you said, like the main purpose of it is it's supposed to be educational. I don't think it needs to be, everyone from today until the rest of their lives, they need to be entering food in an app or weighing things out with a scale. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But yes, for a few weeks or months, tracking your food intake is so eye-opening. Like I, for example, used to think I'm eating a lot of protein and I'm eating so clean. Like why am I not losing any weight? Well, then I tracked my food and I realized, oh, okay, I put a ton of olive oil on everything. That adds up so quickly. And I sprinkle some seeds on my salad. I have some salmon with eggs and blah, blah, blah for breakfast. And I realized, oh, crap, my breakfast is like 800 calories. Okay, that's like a third of what I should be eating in that day, or maybe more. I realized that even in that time, I put like cream in my coffee. My coffee alone, which I had twice a day, was like 150 calories. So it just adds up. I thought I'm just going to snack on a few nuts, not realizing that half
Oh yeah.
handful of nuts was like 300 calories. So like you said, it's really eye-opening. And on top of that, I noticed, okay, I'm really not eating as much protein as I think I'm having, because I was having like 1 or 2 eggs with a meal. I was having maybe like 80 grams of chicken or 100 grams of chicken with a meal. And so in the end, I got to maybe a third or half of the amount of protein I should actually be having. And over time, all of that adds up. And it just, the other part that you mentioned is like simply awareness, because once you realize that, or once you have quote unquote have to weigh things out, you might not have that third tablespoon of olive oil on your salad. You might think,
Oh
okay, maybe
yes.
2 is enough. Or you might think, right, maybe I will, make do with just a teaspoon of peanut butter instead of half of the jar or so. So I think it's just really, really, as you said, really eye opening, and it helps a little bit with portion control. And just for an amount of time, you're like, okay, this is what 500 calories actually looks like, because I thought, oh, I'm eating a salad. Well, if you add all the things up that might be in a salad, the dressing, some cheese, some pine nuts or whatever, it can still be a 800, 900 calorie meal easily. And maybe the sandwich that you were actually craving was actually less calories. And so you didn't have to force yourself to have the salad, because you could have just easily had the sandwich if you would have known that it's actually lower in calories. So love everything that you said. And yes, I mean, while of course I want people to coach with me and to find a nutrition coach, absolutely, you can totally do it on your own. And for anyone listening, I totally encourage you, if you have never tracked your food intake, download any kind of tracking app. It can be MyFitnessPal, Lose It, My Macros, Chronometer. I don't know what you were using. I'm just using MyFitnessPal because I have been using it for all these years. Out of commodity, it's not necessarily better or worse than any others. But I really encourage anyone listening to just commit to, okay, for the next 30 days, anything that goes in my mouth, I'm going to register it. I think one of the mistakes, or some of the mistakes that people make with tracking, are, number one, they think, okay, there's only a point of tracking if I'm in a calorie deficit, if I'm wanting to lose weight. And that's not necessarily true. Even if you have the goal of, I want to recomposition, I want to lose some fat and gain some muscle, I'm not too concerned about the scale. There's absolutely a ton of value, maybe even more value, in tracking just the maintenance calories. And by that, I mean trying to get the same amount of calories that your body is actually burning. Not less, not more, but just trying to see how much should I actually be eating to maintain my body weight. So that's often mistake number one. You think there's only a point in tracking if you are wanting to lose weight, or if you're going for a really low calorie target. And that leads me to point number two, which is often these calorie trackers, they give you a really low budget, because they might ask you for your goal and you're like, oh, okay, I want to lose a couple of kilos or whatever. So you click weight loss, give me my weight loss targets. And then MyFitnessPal or whatever might tell you, you should be eating 1,200 calories every single day. And you might be able to do that for a couple of days, but it's not sustainable. It's absolutely not sustainable. So by just simply saying, I'm just going to track what I'm eating at the moment, or by saying, no, you know what, I'm going to go for 1,800 calories, I can probably lose weight on that also, or maybe even more, right? And by picking a more sustainable approach, you're also making the whole journey more enjoyable, so to speak, because often when people get tired of logging their food, of tracking their food, it's really not as much about the tracking. It's much more about, oh, I don't want to aim for a number that low because I can't stick with it anyway. So that's the second mistake. And the third mistake, I would say, is that exactly in the times when it would probably be most beneficial, most people stop. So most people think, oh, I'm eating out tonight, I'm going for dinner with my friends, I'm not going to log anything tonight. Or I'm going on vacation, I'm not going to log anything. And okay, of course, you don't have to log while you're on vacation. But if you're going on a weekend trip, it could be really beneficial just to estimate. I'm not saying you need to take your food scale with you, but just to say, okay, tonight I'm going to eat pizza. I'm going to share a pizza with my friends just for fun. Let me see how much a slice of margarita is or so. And then you might say, oh, wow, okay, actually, a slice has like 250 calories. I might actually share it with two friends and have a side salad instead of having the whole thing to myself. So I think those three mistakes, if someone listening wants to start logging their food, I think if you embrace that and just think, I don't need to be perfect with my logging, I don't need to put everything on the scale, sometimes I can just estimate, I think that there's a lot of value to just giving it a go.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was using my fitness pal. I still have it. Maybe I will start again one day. I don't know. Just for maintenance, just for rebalancing, my muscle mass with my body
Yeah.
fat. But I have to say that my fitness pal, like a disclaimer for someone who wants to use it, it's very easy because it became much better during the years. Like I remember the first time I downloaded it, I couldn't even find all the foods. But now it's so easy. You just scan the barcode. So most of the time, if you don't have something that you do from scratch, it's easier. But something I used to do a lot was to save the same amount. So the first time it's a lot of workload. You have,
Mhm.
I don't know, I'm preparing something for scratch with vegetables and everything in. And definitely I have to weight them, and I have to estimate, because if I cook for more than one person as well, I have to make sure that I'm putting my intake and not everybody's intake. um, so that was a lot of workload, but you can save it. So if you cook the same recipes over time, well, the work is already done. And I also think right now you can find a lot of things like recipes or things like that, and you just type in. Sometimes you don't find exactly the same, but you can estimate, as you said. It's very easy.
Absolutely. Really such great points. Definitely. And I think, I mean, I have clients all over the world. I have some clients also in Lebanon. I have some clients in the Philippines and so on. And a couple of years ago, my clients would say, I can't find this whatever green curry that I'm looking for, this specific meal. But now there's very, very specific meals from various countries, or as you said, even from restaurants. And if you don't find the exact same one, you can still log a chicken shawarma or something like that from somewhere else. And yeah, I love your points.
Yeah, that's true. So I came to understand there's a concept I've never really heard about from you, and that is periodized nutrition. What is this?
Yeah, so in the nutrition coaching space, this is a term that we kind of throw around to say that it's good to have a plan for how you approach your goal. So, what I mean by that is if someone wants to lose weight, oftentimes we just say, I want to lose weight. Or sometimes if we're a little bit more specific, we might say I want to lose 10 kilos. But then we just say, okay, what kind of diet am I going to go on? Or maybe I am tracking my macros and I have a specific calorie target. But still, a lot of people just think of getting to their goal. And then once they get to their goal, they're like, yay, I'm here now. And then they make either the mistake of just going back to the way of eating before they started their diet, or they are so afraid to gain the weight back so that they stay at really low calories. And of course, that's not sustainable either. That's not healthy for your hormones. That's not healthy for your metabolism. So, what's actually really important is number one, figuring out how long your weight loss phase should be according to your goal. So, if let's say someone wants to lose 20 kilos, that's quite a good amount of weight. And we want to be realistic about that. I'm really, really big on setting realistic expectations with my clients as well, because it just helps us keep motivation. If someone wants to lose 20 kilos and they think, I'm going to get there in 3 months, that's going to be really disappointing if at the 2.5 or 3 months mark, you're still miles away. But if we have the conversation of, okay, I want you to lose weight in a sustainable and a healthy manner. And because of that, we're going to aim for a moderate approach that allows us to maybe lose half a kilo per week. Maybe. So half a kilo for 20 kilos, that would mean we have at least 40 weeks to go. That's 3/4 of a year. That's a long amount of time. So how can I make that more motivating for that person? Well, for maybe you have some vacation time in between. For sure, we want to take a little bit of a maintenance break in between to give your body also the chance to settle into each stage of having lost the weight, and your mind as well. So, for example, in this scenario, we could say, okay, we're going to do 20 weeks, so like 5 months, or that's a long enough time in a weight loss phase. And then we're going to take 2-3 months to just make sure you're settling in at this new set point where you have lost 10 kilos. And then we restore your metabolism, your hormones for these 2-3 months where we're at maintenance. And then we're going to attack again, and for the remainder of what you want to lose. So that's part number one, setting a realistic time frame for the weight loss, but also for how we're going to transition out of it. So instead of me at the end of it saying, okay, see you later, Jenny, good luck with maintaining your weight. For me, one of the main success points is that someone a year, 2, 3, however long down the road, that they're still at, not necessarily at that specific goal weight, but at the weight that they want to be at. So the important part would be here to do something which we call a reverse diet. So from the diet, we slowly, progressively increase your calories again to the point where you are now eating your maintenance calories. So the same amount of calories that your body's also burning. And it's really important to do that gradually and slowly, because otherwise, at the end of a diet, your body is so primed to want to gain all the weight back. You are hungrier, it's sending you all these hormones and hunger signals to actually eat even more. Oftentimes, and I don't know if you've experienced that, but I have experienced that at the end of the diet or after the diet, I'm actually almost hungrier than during the diet. And mindset wise, it's actually also harder than during the diet, because in the diet, you're thinking, I've got my goal. I've only got 2 more kilos to go. I'm so close. I'm going to stay focused. I'm going to stay accurate. And then you reach it. And then you just feel like letting go and enjoying and da, da, da. So it's actually during that time afterwards, the, let's say 1, 2, maybe even 3 months after the diet, that are the most crucial when it comes to still staying somewhat accurate and still staying somewhat diligent about what you're eating, because your body and your mind are going to tell you, eat more, eat more, eat more, eat more. You want to get back to the same level that you were before, or actually even more, because in the end, your body's main goal is to survive, to keep you to survive. And therefore it's thinking, what if another hunger period comes up? I need to make sure Eleanor actually has more body fat than before, so that she's really safe. So everything in your body is screaming, eat more, eat more, eat more, eat more. And if we don't do that slowly, progressively, gradually, and mindfully, strategically, you're probably going to gain some of the weight back, if not all of it, or even more. And yeah, that's, for me, is really, really important, to bring up the calories slowly. And I mean, we can get super technical with this, and in the sense of by how much per week or per when, but generally speaking, the gist is just to slowly, progressively bring them back up until you're at the same level that your body is burning. And then from there, we can do things a little bit more loosely, transition into intuitive eating, or whatever the person feels like they need at that time. But yeah, so that's essentially what we mean by periodized nutrition. And of course, for some people listening, they might actually want to gain some muscle or gain some weight or so. That works the same way. We want to set a specific goal in the sense of how much you should be gaining per week, per month, so that you don't just gain fat, and you actually, build lean muscle and feel great at the end of a muscle building phase, instead of just feeling fluffy and fat and then wanting to cut it all off again.
Correct. Yeah, I guess I have not done the transition because when I stopped, it was basically because I broke my wrist. So I was like, okay, I am reducing too much fat. So at this point, I think I just missed like 1 or 2 kilos. And I was like, okay, whatever. But it's true. You should not like just stop out of the blue. I think what helped me is that I never start again to eat certain things. So I just took them out of my diet. And it happened, of course, that I tried a candy here and there, but like it also depends which type of candies. There's some very sugary and this made from, yeah, pig fat, like those kind of candies. Maybe you just stay away from those, but it's not like you can never eat candies for your life,
Totally.
right?
And something great that we spoke about in our last conversation off air was actually that you mentioned how our taste buds get
Oh,
accustomed to quote unquote healthier eating or different things. And I love that, because it's so true. Like often I'll start working with someone and they might say, oh, I really don't like vegetables at all, or nothing green, or blah, blah, blah. And after a few weeks, they're like, Lisa, I was craving a salad today. What's going on with me? I'm like, oh, hallelujah. That's great. That makes me so happy when I can just feel like it's not just the mind and the person forcing themselves to have something, but it's also their physiological cues, whether like suddenly they want the vegetables, suddenly you don't want the regular chocolate anymore. You're super happy with, dark chocolate, or just a couple of pieces, and you don't actually feel like you want all that stuff that used to be normal for you. So yeah, I think it's wonderful how our bodies learn.
absolutely. Um, I cannot eat, like the other day I didn't have muesli and I was at work And I was like, okay, I will ask around. And my colleague, he had, oh, I have like an entire locker full of muesli. I'm like, perfect. So he comes with like a package and he gives it to me. And I'm like, okay, some muesli and some chocolate. And then I imagine you put it in like yogurt, white yogurt, plain white yogurt. So there was no sugar inside. And then I ate it. And usually when you are eating it with something, you feel even less the sugar. And I felt it. And I look at him and I'm like, wow, this is sweet. And he's like, oh, on the package, there's also written minus 30% of sugar. I'm like, what? Like,
Oh,
this is no way to be like no should like I couldn't. I ate it but I didn't like it, and like as with chocolate I cannot eat anything else than dark chocolate right now.
yeah, it's quite sad actually how packaging gets a lot of people, or just advertising in general, unfortunately. So I mean, there are so many examples. Again, I'm coming from a place of that used to be me as well. So if something used to say like, or it's organic, or it's blah blah blah, I used to think it's healthier, and that's not necessarily, doesn't necessarily mean it's lower in calories or it's gonna be more helpful for weight loss either. Just because a cereal is organic, it can still have a ton of sugar in it. It might be organic sugar, but it still could still have a ton of sugar. Or like you said, if it says 30% less sugar, well, that can still mean that it has
From where?
100 grams of sugar. Like you don't know. Or even when it comes to, this is government recommended blah blah, or recommended by XYZ doctor, I used to fall for that. I used to think, okay, well, if this person has it, this person is lean, it must mean I should have that too. But as we were talking before, simply knowing more about, okay, what if I look at this nutritional label, what does that actually tell me? And I mean, that is what tracking your food intake does to you, because you become more aware. You might actually turn over the cereal box and see, okay, how much added sugar does that still have? Wow, okay, it comes from honey. That's technically a better sugar source. It's still a sugar source though. So yes, I'm so big on education, because for me also that means someone, once we stop working together or so, they're going to continue to do their own thinking. They don't just want to follow a meal plan for 6 weeks, get to their goal weight, and then they stop and they haven't learned anything. For me, it's so important to walk away and just say, like, this has changed my way of thinking about food for the rest of my life, essentially.
Yes, yes, that's so true. You were talking, about going to the technicalities, but after all, it's all about tailoring. So even if you talk about the technicalities, it's not like someone can listen to this podcast and say, "Oh, yes, then I will just do like 200 grams of this or that, and then I will use this percentage." It's really just about tailoring it,
Yes.
and then having someone to support you, but then as you said, the educational part, you have to do the work.
Yes, absolutely. Like, three really, really great points. I mean, accountability can be anybody. It can be your husband. It can be your friend, and both of you say, "Hey, I'm quite uncomfortable in my body. You want to start this whatever food tracking for the next 30 days? Shall we do it?" And every day, at the end of the day, we send each other a screenshot. That can work really, really well. It can be that you're saying, posting it on social media and saying like, "Hey guys, I'm trying to, have less sugar for the month of November or whenever this is airing, and I just want to make sure that you know this, for the next 30 days. Every day, I'm going to post something." Like, accountability can be anybody. It doesn't have to be a coach, but yes, you have to put in the work yourself. I have also worked with people before. They think, I'm paying a nutrition coach, and because of that, I'm getting results. That would be like saying, I'm getting a personal trainer, but I'm going to sit on the couch and I should be getting results. No, no, no. You still need to put in the work. You can get the guidance, you can get the information. It can be a shortcut to your goal, but in the end, you need to put in the work, absolutely. And the third point that you mentioned, which I loved, was the individualization. And we also talked about this a little bit beforehand, how there are just some things that, or well, I guess almost everything with nutrition is so individualized. Yes, there are some overarching principles that I would say apply for 98% of the population. For example, you should be eating more vegetables, you should be eating your fruit, you should benefit, or you would benefit from having some protein, whatever source that might be, in each one of your meals, and so on. But for some people, that might mean I choose to have to do intermittent fasting because I'm not really hungry for breakfast anyway. It helps me eat less calories over the course of the day. I enjoy having bigger meals for my lunch and my dinner. Full stop. For someone else, intermittent fasting might be a terrible idea because they wake up in the morning, and I was sharing that with you, that I actually felt lightheaded. I couldn't focus properly when I was trying to force myself into intermittent fasting. But I was like, oh no, I need to wait another 30 minutes. I'm not allowed to have anything yet. So my work was so unproductive in the early hours of the morning because I was trying to force myself into intermittent fasting. Or someone else might hear about that the keto diet, which their friend has done, and the friend was so successful, and oh, it's so easy to eat on the keto diet, but all you can think about is carbs. Like, I'm a carb lover, so trying to do keto for me just absolutely sounds horrible. So it's so individualized, and finding what works for you is really the key to success, I would say.
Yes. You said you travel and you traveled as well. For our listeners who may be working, in a sedentary office, so they just stay there, but then they have to travel somewhere. And the trip is also strenuous because when you have to do that, it's like, I would say, maybe 1 week. And then you have like a flight, and then you go to the office just right after the flight, and you have no time to rest. So that time, what happens, I've seen this because I've done this as well. You eat whatever it's in front of you. You have to also manage the issues you could have with your digestive systems.
Mm.
And then, yeah, maybe you even overeat, and not sleeping adds issues on top. So what would you say, like, as a first advice, how should you behave?
Yeah, that's so tricky because, as you said, like, we feel more lethargic, and because of that, we crave more of the comfort foods, and then maybe there's just not as big of a food selection around. So it actually all snowballs, and it makes it worse and worse, worse and worse. So, point number one would be, of course, if we have any control over travel timing. For example, if you're traveling for more for leisure rather than for work, I would almost always say try to make sleep a priority, even if it costs you a little bit more, even if it might mean you have to add an extra day. But you're going to perform so much better mentally as well, especially if you're traveling for work and, it's something important there. But you're also just going to feel better sleeping in a bed rather than in an airplane or so. So if you can, try to make sleep a priority nonetheless. I would also say don't try to not make matters even worse with alcohol if you can. And that's tough to hear for a lot of people, especially if you are invited, or like if it might be customary where you go to, and it might at first be kind of triggering, or almost you might feel uncomfortable saying no. But learning to say no more often in life would be one of the biggest mindset advices I would like to give anybody, aside from like all the nutritional stuff, going into the holidays and everywhere as well. Like, if you get more comfortable saying no more often in life, you're going to walk through life so much more confident yourself, and just so much more aligned with what you actually want to do as well. So that could be anything from your grandma wanting to give you the third helping of something, and you can just learn to say no in a polite way and say, thank you, grandma, that was absolutely delicious, but I don't if I have any more, I'm going to feel sick tomorrow, and I don't want that. I loved your food, thank you. Or if you're at that work dinner and they're like, oh, come on, Lisa, have a glass of wine with us, it's lunchtime, it's on the account of the office anyway, you don't need to pay. Saying, oh, no, I'm already feeling kind of jet lagged, or just saying, I don't drink during the day. I still want to go to the gym after this or so. it's uncomfortable in that moment, but only for a short period of time. And even if people look at you a little bit weird, maybe for the next 5 minutes, they're going to forget about it in 5 minutes time. But if you say yes, even though you actually don't want to, you're still going to feel bad about it, not just in 5 minutes, but in an hour and maybe even the next day. And it drags on, drags on, drags on. So yeah, just trying to practice, because it really is a skill to say no more often. So practicing that on a more regular basis, even with the small things. It could be your kids school asking you if you can bake something, but you're already super busy, and just saying, I'm sorry, my plate's already full, I can't do it, I'll do it next time. Yeah, practicing saying no is really a big one. And with that, of course, also not just alcohol, but if we over caffeinate, that makes the jet lag actually worse also. And that's something that I would be mindful of, just thinking, okay, when in that new time zone, when do I want to go to sleep? I'm going to try to stop any caffeine 8, ideally even 10 hours before wanting to go to bed. That would be a really good other suggestion. Of course, when it comes to more practical things for food, especially during the day or during the travel, for long haul flights, I will actually say most airlines these days, they offer something called a special menu. So if you look ahead online on your booking page, that can be Lufthansa, Emirates, Qatar, like all these bigger airlines. If it's a long haul flight, without any extra charge, instead of having the crappy regular food, which is higher in carbs, heavier in fats, makes you feel sluggish, you can also choose something that's either called like a lower calorie meal or a fish meal, and it comes with fruit and barely any fat and so on. So you leave the plane actually feeling a bit more energized rather than really weighed down. So that would be one point. But even when you get there, during the day in particular, choosing things that don't make your blood sugar crash so much is a really good approach. So what could that be? In your lunch, I would say finding some leaner protein source with some vegetables, and maybe saying no to the heavy pasta dish or the pizza or the bread. In the evening, I'm not so concerned about that, because it's okay to be sleepy in the evening afterwards. But yeah, especially during the day, if it's a work trip or if it's something where you want to have energy, something like a nice salad with fish, or like a steak with grilled vegetables on the side or so, is going to leave you a lot better than that heavy, creamy, whatever, rice or pasta dish, or really just carb heavy dish. And as I was saying, I'm by no means someone who's against carbs. It's just we want to time them properly so that your blood sugar is staying in a more, balanced kind of level, as opposed to spiking it and then crashing, and then you want a muffin and then you crash again, and then you have this half the bread basket and then you crash again. So that's just things to become a bit more mindful of. And I guess the last thing I'll say on the travel tips would be that also oftentimes that's when we stop taking any supplements. If we're taking supplements, of course, supplements are exactly what the name says. They should only be supplemental to good nutrition anyway. Nonetheless, I do think that most people can benefit at least from some supplements. For example, vitamin D if it's in the middle of the winter, or for example, fish oil if we don't consume a lot of fish and just generally we deal with a lot of stress. So there are a few things that people might be taking on a regular basis. And often when people go and travel, they stop taking any of them because they forget about them, or it's inconvenient to pack them or whatever. And that's even more so when your body would benefit from them, because you're probably eating lower quality foods. You're not eating your normal vegetables. You were saying about digestive symptoms. So it might even be for some people worth taking something like a greens powder or something that helps you with digestion in terms of digestive enzymes or so. So I would just say continue taking the supplements that you were taking before, if not considering taking anything additional in order to help you deal with all the travel stress as well. And I guess to the last point of digestion as well, making sure you're staying hydrated is so undervalued when it comes to traveling. I almost recommend drinking like an extra liter on top of what you're already drinking when you're traveling. There's something about the pressure in airplanes, but also when you're just sitting, it helps you flush things out. It helps you feel more satiated. There's a ton of benefits to drinking more when you're traveling.
Yeah, I really second this. So I do actually choose a vegetarian meal. I do eat meat, but I'm also thinking, well, like, what kind of meat could I have on a plane? Like, seriously. So definitely, I'm not gonna eat that. I would prefer to have only fruit because it has water. But the thing is, some airlines don't actually have only fruit plates. Another problem I've recognized is like if you're just booking economy, I mean, you're a little bit luckier if you can get like premium economy already, or of course, if you get business or a first. Um, but in economy, really, the amount of water you get is like very low. And this dehydrates people so much that you don't even understand. Like, I also feel my skin that is not as it should be, right? And sitting, this is so bad for, like you don't have water. I mean, of course, if you have a lot of water, this is also not the best, I would say, to not move, but at least it will push you to go to the bathroom,
Yeah,
then you move.
very, very good point. And I think many people don't consider that you can't, while of course through security you cannot take liquids, but you can still take a bottle through security.
Yes.
So once you get through, you can fill it up in the water dispenser, no problem. You don't need to pay $10 for really expensive airport water. But filling up your bottle on a regular basis or even on long haul flights, you can often say to the air hostess, hey, can I get some extra water? And they won't mind that. And to the point of movement as well, yes, you might have a really long work day, but most hotels, they, even if the gym at the hotel is probably terrible, in most cases they will have a treadmill. So I mean, of course, ideally you would get up in the morning before your workday starts and maybe explore the city a little bit for half an hour by foot or so, just get some steps in and get some sunlight in, which also is going to help you with sleep later on. But an alternative, even if it's not as great, an alternative could just be, okay, I'm going to, instead of laying in bed and scrolling through my phone or answering my emails on my phone, laying in bed, you can do that on the treadmill. It's not sexy, it's not a cool concept, but it's still better you're walking on the treadmill while answering your emails than just being sedentary all day long, finishing your long work day with 1,000 or 2,000 steps in the quote unquote bank. Yeah, I'm a big fan of walking. I think it's really, really underrated.
Or it just reminds me of that time last year when I started like watching series on the treadmill because I was very pressed hard at work. Plus, I was doing a certification, and I mean, my day would be like working and then basically during the break I would no actually I would wake up in the morning and study at least half an hour, then I would go to work, and during my break I would test myself or study, and then I would continue work, and then like at the end of the day I was exhausted and there was no time for me to actually exercise. The only thing that actually helped me was watching some TV series and go running. That running was the only thing I could do because honestly, it's just a complete workout for your whole body and it's fast. You need 20, 30 minutes. You don't need more than that. So that was just like eye opening. I still do it. I mean, maybe not at the same extent because I have time to do other type of exercises. Thank God. But it's helpful, really. Just watch
I
everything.
Well, I love it. And I mean, again, like people sometimes get caught up in perfectionism. They think if I can't do an hour run, it's not worth it. Or if I can't get my steps in walking by this beautiful river in bright sunlight, it's not worth it. But truth is exactly what you said. We need to make do with what we've got. And sometimes it is unsexy and you are answering your emails while walking on the treadmill and you feel like an idiot, but it's better than just being sedentary all day long. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of just trying to make do with what you've got, whether that pertains to nutrition, to any other habit, to your training, whatever it might be.
Yeah, absolutely. You were talking about the hormones, and I also wanted to ask you about metabolism and like, could you have a broken metabolism? Like, could you reach a point where, oh, this is just, the lowest possible values you could have for your metabolism? And what is, the role of hormones in this?
Yeah, really great question. And I think the term like broken metabolism or metabolic resistance, as it's often also called, is being thrown around quite a lot. And sometimes people say, uh, my metabolism is broken, I can't lose any weight. I've heard that several times when people come to us. And well, first of all, I want to acknowledge what that person is feeling, and maybe they have tried a lot of things and nothing is happening. But I will say that in 80% of the time, when people say that, they are underestimating, number one, might be underestimating how much they're actually eating, to the point that we were making earlier. So many times I've heard, oh, I haven't really eaten anything all day long. And when I dig closer, like, what does that actually mean? Well, they might have had a few bites from their kid's sandwich here, then they finished whatever they were prepping for their husband there, and then they actually had a big muffin with like 700 calories in the afternoon. Okay, that's not a lot, but in the end, it still added up to you ate something. You didn't eat nothing all day long, but it might have felt like you weren't eating much. So I'm saying this lovingly, just because I know that it happens and it's not to your fault. I'm not accusing someone to say like they were hiding calories. It's just sometimes we're not aware of how much we're actually eating. So that's part number one. But part number two is that our metabolism is actually really smart and does actually adapt, meaning if you consistently eat not enough or eat below what your body wants, it's going to say, going back to the point of it just wants you to survive, it's going to say, well, I'm going to down regulate a little bit. I'm not going to put out as much energy. I'm just going to might not fidget as much. I'm going to down regulate some hormonal processes. I always refer to this as kind of like a laptop. When you plug your laptop in, that's kind of like when you're eating as much as your body wants you to have. And everything is functioning amazing. All the backup processes, the lighting is great, everything is awesome. And then you unplug the laptop. It's kind of like going into a diet. At first, everything functions the same, still running all the great things and so on. But after a while, your laptop starts saying, I'm not going to run the backup processes. We're going to conserve a little bit of energy. And the closer you get to like that low point, the less it's going to do in the background. And the same is true with your metabolism. It might stop producing the hormones as well. So some females, some women, if they have dieted for a long time, they lose their period. Some men also, they lose their sex drive. Other things happen. Your thyroid is not functioning as well. Lots of things that are affected by our hormones. We might not sleep as well. All these things happen when we are dieting for a long period of time, because your body is like, all I'm going to do is I want to get you to survive, but I'm going to pull back on the backup processes. So that is what we call metabolic adaptation. And we don't call it metabolic breakdown anymore, because broken would signal that it's permanent. And thank God it's really not. As I was saying, your metabolism is really, really smart. So when we do what I mentioned earlier, the reverse diet, when we bring your calories back up slowly and gradually, that's like you plugging your laptop back in, and slowly and gradually it's going to do everything again. It's not straight away. It's not going to be all fully loaded and everything and charged again straight away. You need to build that trust with your metabolism again and just tell your body, hey, I'm taking care of you again. You can be safe. You're safe. You can put out more energy again. You can fidget again. You have more energy for going for your hikes. And after a while, usually it does actually take a few weeks, maybe sometimes even months, depending on how long someone has dieted. Um, After a few months, you should be able to have a good metabolism again. And yeah, I do work with some women that really have spent several years eating not enough, especially if they're working out a lot, and it's this whole mindset of you need to earn your calories and so on. In those cases, it can actually take quite some time. Sometimes we say a month for each year that you were under eating, sort of thing, minimum. So if someone has been under eating for 10 years, 15 years, it can take over a year time before we restore that metabolic health again. But it is absolutely possible, as long as you really do take care of your body, as long as you eat those healthy fats that you were talking about earlier also. So yeah, that's what we mean by adaptation. And then, of course, sometimes people talk about, oh, my metabolism is broken because they enter perimenopause or menopause. Like some women enter perimenopause even in their 30s. It does happen in 35. Even I've seen it even earlier. And sometimes they think that that their metabolism starts drastically slowing down at that point. And that's really not the case. It's more the case that your hormones are just starting to wreak havoc, and therefore kind of taking regular blood work, just becoming more aware of certain things, and becoming more mindful of sleep routine, so that at least you don't struggle with those night sweats and that affects your appetite and your metabolism in a negative way. That's really important. Or also the other thing that I have found, or seen quite often, is that in that time frame, we respond to alcohol a lot poorer than beforehand. And so often they might say, I'm eating exactly the same way as before. I'm working out exactly the same way as before. And suddenly the kilos are piling on. Why is this happening? And yeah, that in their mind, of course, is, either hormones or metabolism slowing down. But I will say that if you pay attention to alcohol intake, keeping that moderate, minimal, or even completely out, if you keep going with a good exercise routine and you keep on top of your energy consumption, you can still not just maintain a good weight, but also lose weight throughout perimenopause and menopause as well.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. Yeah, the composition of your chemicals in the body are changing, so you cannot expect your body to react the same way. You have to keep changing as well your habits. It's
Absolutely. That, and I mean, of course, sometimes we also think stress or emotional things and so on are not affecting us, but they really are playing a role. So, like, if someone says, I used to do this diet or used to do this exercise routine when I was in my 20s and I didn't have any kids, I had no family, I didn't have the same pressure at work that I have now, with a family, with kids, with maybe a boss that I hate, maybe I'm fighting with my husband, I'm going through a divorce or whatever. All of this is stress for our body, and that kind of stress affects our weight loss just as much. So we cannot say that that is a separate point. You have to consider the whole picture. You have to give yourself a little bit of grace for that as well, and just say, stress is stress. In the end, your body doesn't recognize whether the stress comes from you running away from a tiger, or you being in a calorie deficit for too long, or you fighting with your husband. It's all perceived as stress, and that manifests in a higher cortisol level, and that manifests or transfers over to other hormones. So yeah, it's all connected.
yeah, we kind of wait until we reach the breaking point, and sometimes it's not even reversible. I'm saying this because I've been talking with someone else. I will be interviewing her soon, and I mean, she got cancer, you know,
Wow.
and she survived, of course, but it's, cancer is coming for maybe like 10 years, and then like suddenly you're like, oh, I've been stressed for 10 years and I did not taken care of myself, and now this is the result. and nobody tells you that.
Well, and so often people will say, like, oh, but I used to be able to deal with that. Well, it's all well and good until it isn't. Your body
Yes.
is really good and really resilient for a short amount of time because it doesn't need to be. And it's it's tolerating it, and it might think, okay, I know, no, I trust her. She's going to take care of me later on. But if you keep pushing that trust and you keep pushing your body away, even though it's nudging you like, hey, take a rest. Hey, don't do that. You should probably sleep more. You shouldn't drink quite as much alcohol. And you keep ignoring it, at some point it adds up. It's all accumulative. So yeah, I mean, I'm very sorry and sad to hear about the lady. Of course, thankfully she survived. And sometimes we need exactly stories like that to just shake us awake and to make us go into change, because it's so easy to put your own health off. I think we're so much more attuned to you, even pets or our kids or whatever. When they're not feeling well, we're like, oh, you should rest, or like take them to the doctor. But if it's about yourself, you're like, oh, no, 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 I'm too busy for that right now. I'm gonna get that checked next month, and then a year later. So yes.
Yes, I agree with that. It's so easy to tell others to take care of themselves than to really understand that you have to stop. And you have to stop and just do nothing. It doesn't matter what your ideas are of what you should be doing today or tomorrow. Sometimes the body tells you, look, there's nothing else you should do than just sit and wait, basically, and let me repair myself.
Oh, and I will be the first to admit that I think it's so hard. Like, honestly, I mean, for me, exercise is so much of a part of my day that actually it's harder for me to take rest days than to go to the gym. And, not everybody listening is going to resonate with that, but some people, you can transfer that into work things. So a day of doing absolutely nothing, it's so hard for me. And of course, you can still do some active recovery, going for a lovely walk or whatever. I have installed a meditation practice into my habits as well. And it's one of the hardest parts of my day, because almost most days, or almost every day, I don't want to do it. It's kind of like the whole thing. I don't know if you've ever had anyone on here talking about cold plunges or, ice bath or something like that. And everyone says they don't get easier with time. Well, I don't. I think it's the same thing with meditation for me, to be honest. But every time that I've done it, even if it's just 3 minutes, afterwards I feel better. But beforehand, everything in my mind is saying, "Oh, Lisa, don't do it today. You don't need to do it today. Come on, 3 minutes. It's a waste of time. You could just be, I don't know, doing something else, answering this and that email. But it is worth it, absolutely. And I think that applies probably to a lot of people, that it's almost harder for us to do nothing than to do some hard things.
Yeah, busy bee mind, right?
Mhm.
Staying with your thoughts. I realized this. So I actually was listening to a podcast. They were talking about the dependence we have, the addiction actually we have with our phones and devices in general. Especially kids and teenagers right now, they are born with them. So that's a totally different relationship. And they said something really interesting. So they did research. This guy actually does research on video games. He was a gamer. So the parents tried to take him out, sent him to India to meditate. Yeah, they did like some pretty big stuff, but they also were researchers. So they knew a little bit of more things than the normal people. And what really strikes me most is like, put someone who is addicted to their phone, put them in a room with nothing, just, a chair, and there's like a blank wall in front of you. Leave them there, even just 10 minutes. Like, you don't have to leave them for 1 hour, which would be like overwhelming. And then they're like, so what happens? And he said, well, every person has a different reaction. Some people cry. And I was like, what? And like, yeah, some people like get so overwhelmed that they have nothing to do. So you cannot stay in your own thoughts for more than, I don't know, 2-3 minutes. Same, I realize with myself, some days I'm so overwhelmed that I need to have headphones and listening to music. But then when I, let's say, do a solo hiking, even just for 4 hours, which is still some time, I realize, well, actually, I trained enough to be with myself for
Mm.
4 hours. And then some days, actually, I'm like, I don't want to listen to anything. I just want to walk and think. And then eventually it passes. But this is something you have to train. It's not something that comes out of the blue.
100%. I couldn't agree with that more. And it's such a beautiful thing when you get to that point where your body is craving that stillness. And I mean, there is something about stillness and movement and nature combined, like all these three things. So rejuvenating. But to the point of the researcher, I actually read a study or heard about a study where they gave people the option of 15 minutes of doing nothing or giving themselves an electric shock. And
Oh,
like
yeah.
80% of people prefer to give themselves an electric shock than doing absolutely nothing for a few. I mean, that's really quite sad, to the point of which we have gotten. But as you said, like if we just live in our natural environment, we always want to be entertained. We want to have things coming in. Want to have music and podcasts and blah 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 blah. And I mean, there are some great things about that, but we need to consciously make time for stillness. I really truly think so. And I mean that also transfers over into eating once again. Like we eat while we're walking, we eat while scrolling on our phones, and I think just practicing more
Yeah.
mindfulness while eating as well can go a really long way, because it actually makes you realize sooner when you're satiated. It makes you appreciate your food a lot more, and you don't need all this stimulation at the same time. Like even just eating broccoli or whatever without a ton of sauce and without a ton of seasonings and so on, and just becoming more mindful of like, okay, what does it actually look like? What does the texture in my mouth feel? I'm eating just the broccoli. I'm not drowning it in some artificial sauces, and I'm not being so distracted by the TV or the thing that I'm watching on my Instagram while I'm eating this. So just being more in the moment while we're eating can be really, really helpful. And I mean, we're all so busy, so it's also easy to like eat at the desk and shove it in within 5 minutes. But saying or realizing that, hey, your body deserves those 5 minutes or hopefully a little bit more, where it just can focus on eating, where you can switch into that parasympathetic rest and digest nervous system, as opposed to still being on the go, thinking about a ton of things, and you're not actually digesting here and there. And that is where we see a lot of digestive issues pop up. People that never used to have digestive issues, suddenly they become more stressed and everything. Like stress is one of the biggest things impacting our digestive system. And so I often here, I'm quite constipated, or I only go to the bathroom every 3 days or so. And I mean, that's not A, it doesn't feel great. B, it's not great for your body because you're keeping all these toxins in your body. And C, it long term is not just generally not something that we should ignore. So thinking about, okay, how can I help my digestive system? Well, by taking a few deep breaths before I'm eating, or maybe going for a 5-minute walk after I have eaten to help my digestion. All these little things, they might seem so minute, but if we can make them into habits, they really, really can make a big difference long term.
Yes, true. So we've talked a little bit about nutrition and periodization of it, some advices about traveling. You had a lot of experience. So what is your right now the idea you have for the next years? So what would you like to share even more? And what's the main goal you want to achieve with this?
Oh, that's, yeah, hard question, because I do want to share a lot, but in essence, my message really hasn't changed. I mean, I've been a full-time nutrition coach coming up 6 years now, and I really just want to give people the message that they can live the life that they want, a life that they're truly happy with. And that also entails like creating the life that you want, because for many years, I was just following into the steps that I thought my parents or society wants me to do in order to be a quote unquote good person. And once you snap out of that and you realize a lot of the things that we do, we just do because we've always done them, or because we do them because we think they're expected of us. So I do want people to even snap out of that and realize I can create the life that I want. It might require hurting some people or losing some people or leaving my comfort zone, but I can create the life that I want. So I broke away from a full-time secure job, and became a digital nomad almost 6 years ago, and that was scary. But no year or time goes by where I'm not grateful that I took that step. And I'm not saying that people need to become digital nomads. I'm just saying choose your life. Don't wake up at some point and realizing, oh, I'm living the life that I thought was expected of me, but I'm really unhappy. So that's part number one. But part number two, while I'm living this life, I can feel great in my body. I can feel confident with all the foods that I'm choosing, whether it's over Christmas, whether it is when I'm on vacation, whether it's just at home. And that also giving me, of course, a longer lifespan. So bringing those two things together, having a body that you love, and for most people that will mean some kind of fat loss or muscle growth, so that they actually look defined and shaped, and not just kind of skinny fat or so. Yeah, so that continues to be my message.
Yes, that's lovely. So, Lisa, thank you very much for being here today. It was really interesting to talk about all those topics, and I'm pretty sure also our listeners will benefit from that. I thank you, and I wish you have a great weekend now.
Well, thank you so much, Eleanor, for having me on. Honestly, this has been a true pleasure. And I think you're doing such a great job by just trying to spread the message of more health and nutrition advice throughout your circle. I love the title of this podcast as well, because I truly think anybody who has a body, who can move their body, is an athlete. And we are in charge of our own body. Sometimes people wait for that person to come and take their hand and say like, hey, you have more potential. But we need to wake up and see our own potential and then take action on it. And I love that you're helping people to do that.
Thank you. Thank you very much.